Hello, National Fixed League, and welcome to the Championship Week podcast. Eric Zaleski and Robbie Wright with you live here on Saturday, December the 26th. We know it's been a while, but we welcome everybody back. It took Robbie coming all the way from Philadelphia for us to get back in front of the camera, but we're happy to be here with you. A huge championship week ahead.
It's a big one.
And we are here today to preview the third place matchup as well as the championship matchup, and just to kind of catch everybody up overall on what's been going on in the world and in fantasy football as well. So welcome once again, and we are off. We're back in the saddle. Rob, how you doing?
Doing great. It's good to be here.
Yeah, and so I guess unless you're in the hockey league and you've been seeing a couple of our hockey podcasts, a lot of you are probably wondering, where have the football podcasts been? Why have they stopped? And the answer to that is, well, Austin Ravito, my former co-host for these podcasts, basically picked up and left. He picked up and left without really much of a warning. Again, what I've told people was I was getting Snapchats from a U-Haul as he was driving into the city of Chicago. And that's when I kind of realized...
And a little time out here, I was fist pumping because of the Miami football game, not because of Ravito's gone. So, clarify
just
that.
so you know, yeah, Robbie has opted to put a little bit of wager on this Miami-Washington State game.
Second half line.
A little second half action. Hopefully, if he loses, he doesn't have to go and report fraud. We won't get into that in detail. But if you want to hear that story, shoot me a text. But anyway, so it's been a while. I have admittedly not been keeping up with fantasy football at all. My team in this league and many others is not good.
I have a little bit.
So it's been hard, and we always talk how hard it is to keep up when things just aren't going your way.
Right.
So for me, I've kind of gotten away from the fantasy. Now, I'm still watching the game, so I have a pretty good idea of what's going on. But as far as this league is concerned and how certain teams are doing and what players each team has, I really don't have much of a clue. So we did take a quick look before we jumped on air here, but we're going to be kind of winging this a little bit. And as I mentioned in the intro, what we're going to do here is we're going to start off by previewing the third place matchup. And if you guys don't recall back at home, the winner of that third place, fourth place game gets their money back, so $100 back. And then the championship, of course, second place gets $300, first place gets $800. So that's the game we're going to spend, obviously, the most time on, and kind of give credit where credit's due.
Absolutely.
So first off, third place game is you and Rod.
Yes.
Rod Kern, who's back in Pittsburgh as well that time of year. It's good to see everybody's faces. Everybody's coming back around. And in the championship game, and I believe I said this on the last podcast, this was the matchup I was hoping for.
The best two teams are there.
The Steel Curtain, Curdot, versus Aces Deuces Lounge, Chad Zaleski. And by far, on paper, the two best teams in this league.
Absolutely.
Very deserving that they both made it to the final. So we are going to break down both of those matchups in depth. So we're going to jump into that right now. We're going to try to keep this relatively quick today. I know these we say that every single podcast.
Every single podcast.
And it tends to carry on for about an hour. But we'll kind of see where this ends up. But we will keep it moving. So let's jump into that third place matchup. This is $130 against the spread. Mr. Robert Wright versus Eric Top, Ravito Bottom, Rod Kern.
That name gets me every time.
And just to kind of wrap up, we're going to do a quick little season in review. You finished the year 6-7 on a 3-game losing streak.
Yeah.
Is that accurate?
It was rough, yeah.
So you limped into the playoffs.
Barely. Won one game against the Lassonde brothers.
Okay, and then, so that was my next question. So you beat the Lassonde brothers in round 1. If I'm not mistaken, that was the second year in a row that you've bumped them.
I've knocked them out 2 years in a row, correct.
You wanted me to pass along a little trash talk. I sent you the phone numbers, but you said...
No, I did not want to trash talk them. I legit felt bad for them because I had no business winning. And literally none of their guys showed up that game.
Well, you also mentioned that you didn't feel comfortable, you didn't know them. And
yeah,
saying anything bad about
yeah.
them. So, just for you guys back at home, Robbie does have a kind, soft heart after all. But you finished the year 6-3, limping into the playoffs. You get a big win against Lassonde, and here we are, a chance for you to win $100.
See, that's the beauty thing, though, is if you limp in the playoffs, all you got to do is just win that one wildcard game, and you have a chance to win money.
Yeah,
right then. And my goal was a third place game because I knew there was to be a long shot if I ever make the championship. So,
right.
I mean, I'm here.
And this is why we give that little $100 bonus for this third week, because it's nice to have 2 games that mean something in the final week. And
I won it last year and ended up being paid for gambling debt, so hopefully it doesn't happen again.
Well, let me say, I mean, and I probably should have let off with this, but it's hard to believe here we are, and already in championship week. We talk about the football sandwich; it's almost gone.
Seems like just yesterday, Rod had the cock slap going over the Seattle defense.
That's right. Yes, I got cock slapped for the Seattle D, who may have actually been my highest producing.
That was a great pick.
It was, and I knew that at the time. It sucks to take them as early as you have to, but as far as from a production standpoint. Yeah, the Seattle D produced. It was worth the cock slap, if I can say that.
Absolutely.
Jumping over to Rod's team real quick, they finished 8-5 in the regular season.
He has a good team. It's just mind blowing because he was relatively intoxicated during the draft.
Right? And, yeah, we gave him a lot of grief during the draft. He went wide receiver heavy, and the more and more
this is the way to
fantasy football progresses, we're understanding the importance of wide receivers. So he finished year 8-5, couple of wins, and to end the year. He did obviously win his first matchup against who? I don't know. Do you know that answer?
Oh boy.
I don't know who even.
I could think. Oh, John.
Oh, Johnny Z. That's right.
And he was talking so much smack to him at the draft too. So guess it worked.
He goes down. Well, John made some significant improvements over this past year. As you guys recall, Tesla Motors from the previous year was dead last. He only won 1 game, so it was a nice bounce back year.
If I'm not mistaken, first game and didn't win since.
That is an accurate statement. So for him to bounce back, have a nice year like this is big for him. And hey, he keeps up that progression, he'll be right there in the championship next year. So good for John. But Eric Top, Ravito Bottom took them out, and now here you guys stand, a battle for third place. Let's jump right into it. We'll start off with your lineup. And are these all of your starters? For this week. Is this the official lineup?
Let me see.
Pending any late.
Yeah, that's my lineup. My team, I have no depth as it is, so.
Yeah, I'm seeing a lot of red up and down your lineup. Let's start with the quarterback, Carson Palmer. What a pick this was this year. Did you draft him?
No, I got him. I traded Gronk. Whenever Andrew Luck went down, I knew how to do something. And
that's right.
I traded Gronk, and I got Carson Palmer, Doug Martin, and Antonio Gates. That trade is actually the reason I made the playoffs.
Yeah, that was big. And at the time, I know we were still doing the podcast back then, or right around then, because I can recall mentioning this.
It didn't look too hard on paper, but I mean, I ended up actually thinking both teams panned out there.
Yeah.
And I mean, it got me this far, so.
And this trade occurred back on November the 11th, which that was probably right around when our last podcast was.
Yeah.
And as you mentioned, Gronk for Doug Martin, who's been a very nice player this year, Antonio Gates, and Carson Palmer. So for you, very nice deal. Carson Palmer, currently the 4th ranked quarterback at his position, statistically speaking. So a very nice, solid start there for your lineup.
I mean, if you look at our lineups here, I mean, quarterback, I have the edge with quarterback. I have the edge with kicker, which I know Rod gave me a lot of grief for taking Gostkowski in the 9th round. And
we will get down to that. So yeah, we'll literally go position by position here. So let's jump over to Rod's quarterback now. Let's do that. He's got Blake Bortles.
He hasn't been bad this year. I given him a lot of grief in my podcast for my league, but I mean, he puts up numbers. I mean, look at the last 4 games here.
Well, his position rank is 5. So Palmer at 4, Bortles at 5. So this is very, very close. And as you mentioned, he's had 4 consecutive solid weeks of 22.5, 32.8, 25.7, and 24.3. So you wonder if he kind of regresses.
He gets a lot of second half points.
But he has been very strong this year. An absolute starter at the helm.
Get him! Yes!
For Eric Top, Ravito Bottom. So if I'm looking at it there, and you look at the matchups, you have Palmer going against Green Bay, Bortles going against the Saints. Neither D particularly strong.
No, if I had to give the edge, I'd probably do it myself here, just because I'll probably give Rod the edge on every other position, so make it a little more interesting here.
All right. I mean, hard to go against Carson Palmer. He's been automatic this year. I think if there was ever a time to do it, it could be this week, Bortles against New Orleans.
And just the fact that Bortles has had some good weeks here the last 4 weeks, he might be due for a bad one.
You're thinking he regresses back to the mean a little bit. Okay, I can understand that. Jumping down now to the running backs, and we do have Robbie does have a couple guys cemented in who played on Thursday night. Rod has nobody. one of your players, Daniel Woodcock, out of San Diego, had a pretty nice game for you. Respectable game.
He did all right on Christmas Eve.
10.8 fantasy points for Woodhead, who had, it looks like 11 rushes for 55 yards. We know he does a lot of his damage in the passing game.
Yes. I left him on the bench the week before that, too, and never again.
So you have him, and you go across the road now, and we get to Eric Top-Revieto Bottom's first running back, and not a bad player to have. Out of Minnesota, Adrian Peterson.
If you were in this, I know this is with a lot of different leagues. If you were the second pick, you had a good season because pretty much everyone took Adrian Peterson. I mean, you look at Le'Veon Bell, he went down. Jamal Charles went down. Eddie Lacy's been garbage, and who's the other running back? Marshawn Lynch. He's been hurt. So I mean, Adrian Peterson was the guy, and I mean, if you had him, you were set to really have a good year.
And I will say, I haven't done much right this fantasy season. But if you can recall, you had the first overall pick, if I'm not mistaken, in your league.
I had the second.
Oh, the second overall.
Pick.
Who went number one?
Le'Veon Bell.
And so you had a decision between who?
Peterson and Charles. I'm with Peterson.
And I did give you.
You helped me with that one.
I sold Adrian Peterson on that one.
Yeah. Yes.
Which that's again one of the few things I've done right this year. But he has been an absolute monster for Minnesota. Let's look at his stats. His position rank is 2. He's coming off a little bit of a down week, only
that scares me.
18 attempts for 63, and that
he's
should
had some
scare
3
you.
down weeks. He's due to go off.
You're right. Yes, he's had.
Which I have in my other league. My other league, I'm in a third place game as well. I literally have the almost exact same as Rod, so I pretty much accepted I'm probably going to go 1-on-1 here.
Yes, because something's going to go right and something's going to go wrong. But yeah, I mean, you have to think that Peterson is going to be ready to rock here. He's going up against the Giants. I'm going to go ahead and assume that he gets at least 11 points against the Giants, giving Peterson the edge over Woodhead.
That's fair.
It's a safe play.
Yeah.
So we'll jump down to the second running backs now, and for 130 against the spread, Douglas Martin. We've touched on him a little bit already. He is a nice player. Position rank 3. This is stunning to me.
Stunning is right.
There was a lot of talk preseason that he was starting to look like himself again.
Here's a little fun fact. Let me interrupt you, but whenever I was talking to John with acquiring a running back, I wanted Ivory, and he gave me Martin instead.
How has Chris Ivory been?
Garbage lately.
Not good.
Yeah, so Doug Martin's been the man.
So, John did you a little favor there, obviously. Doug Martin, what a bounce back year for him. He's had a couple of down years, some injuries along the way.
If you ask me, that was a little bit of fraudulent activity there.
It could have been, it might have been a little fraudulent. Might have to report that. Anyway, so he's looking strong for you. Had a couple of 14-point weeks, followed by
he's a back and forth guy. If you look here, I mean, the last 6 weeks he has a double-digit week. He'll go single. I mean, I like him this week against the Bears.
Yeah, coming off a 9.7-point week, and the Bears D again has not been particularly good. So you have to think that Doug Martin is a nice little play this week. Going across the aisle now, Cameron Artis-Payne for Eric Top-Revieto Bottom, the Carolina running back
I don't know the
at
first thing
Atlanta.
about this guy. So.
And I'm wondering if Jonathan Stewart
He's out.
got hurt.
He's out.
And there it is. I said it on the last podcast. I believe I said Jonathan Stewart was due to go down any day. It's exactly what he did. And here comes Cameron Artis-Payne. Some talk of him in some of the pre-draft stuff as well. People were kind of counting on Stewart dropping at some point, and this is a guy that a lot of people thought could step in, get the job done. It looks like he got his first real week of action this past week against the Giants. 14 carries for 59 yards. Looks like he did a little something in the receiving game as well for 9.3 fantasy points. So you wonder if he gets a little bit of an increased workload this week, being the second week that he's back. But it looks like a waiver wire pickup here for Rod. And a little plug and play. You'll take it. But I will give Doug Martin the edge with those two running backs. Mm-hmm. Jumping down to wide receivers now, and we have a couple of good ones here. For Robert Wright, how about Martavis Bryant?
I like him this week a lot.
The Pittsburgh Steeler. This guy, quiet. He's been a little bit of a boom or bust wide receiver.
You aren't kidding.
He's had weeks of 26 and 21. Look
at his neck tattoos.
He's also had weeks of 5. His last 2 weeks have been 5 and 8.7. So he's due for a big week. Maybe a long touchdown is kind of what he's known for.
It's coming.
They love going deep to Martavis. you mentioned the neck tattoo, very intense.
Very intense.
Very intense looking, an odd looking guy here to say the least.
This you can just tell he's well educated.
But so is this a guy? This is obviously a guy you drafted.
I drafted him. Yeah.
Let's see what pick overall you took him here. 63rd overall in the 6th round.
My first 4 picks were Gronk, Andrew Luck, Carlos Hyde, and Rashard Jennings.
Wow.
Yeah.
Man, amazing to think that you're here.
It's been a lot of just waiver wires. I picked up Doug Martin, pretty sure on waiver, or maybe I got him late, and it's been a lot of waivers and just patience.
Yeah, and I've said this for years. Championships are totally won and lost on the waiver wire.
Right.
You have to be active. That's one thing that if I'm being critical of myself, that's one thing I could have done better over the past 2 seasons where I haven't been seeing
that's
success.
why I really like how we do it with the auction is
because you get a chance every
it's
single
strategy too. I mean, it takes strategy to
how much you want to commit to
Right.
a single player.
I remember like the very last year we did. I took 4 set. I put down 50 in my 150, and it panned out great.
Right, and a lot of people do like the auction. The only person that was giving backlash on the auction was Rod. But the thing about the other way is that I think it's like if you're in last place, you get the first priority on the waiver.
I don't like rewarding the weak.
Yeah, I'm not real big on that either.
Mm-hmm.
I like everybody having a crack at each player.
I don't mean to interrupt you here, but this is something to think about with the draft next year. Is for the bottom 6, that playoff is like the first 6 picks, and I believe you move on after you make that like the bottom 6. Whoever comes first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth out of that is the draft order.
So the bottom 6 are jockeying for the number. So if you win the bottom 6.
You get the first pick.
You get the first pick. The only thing about that is if I'm a team on the bubble going into the last week, and
it could take strategy. I mean, you could.
Yeah, and could I drop the last game and then ramp it up and try to get that first pick?
Let's be real.
I think I'm gonna.
Look how first pick has panned out the last few years.
Yeah, you may not necessarily.
I hate first pick, and I traded you it. I like being right in the middle.
Yeah.
I mean, and.
Yeah. No, yeah, I liked my position this year. I think I was 4.
That's a great spot.
And I like that because you could still get some top-end talent. Granted, I took Eddie Lacy.
I was 10. I hated it the entire time.
So, but it's just the one thing that's beautiful about fantasy football is it's totally unpredictable.
Right.
It's totally unpredictable.
I mean, I'd say it's probably 60% skill, 40% luck.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, it takes some skill.
Because you're banking on injuries.
Right. You can't control that.
Exactly. We're getting a little sidetracked, though. So we have Martavis Bryant going up against Alshon Jeffrey.
What is wrong with
He's got a little D next to his name, so he may be out this week. It looks like it's a hamstring ailment. And
who's the
his status is
wide receiver?
uncertain.
Might be Marcus Wheaton time.
Let's see.
Who would he plug in there?
He's
hopefully like Rod's like drunk and like forgets and
Dorial Green Beckham. He's been coming on a little bit. That's not a bad option to have there. He also has Keyshawn Martin out of name.
I don't know the first thing about him.
Nah, he's not doing much anything. So it's looking like it would be Green Beckham taking the lineup if Jeffrey can't go.
Where's Wheaton projected?
Where's Wheaton?
Down there.
Oh, he's sitting at the bottom. I didn't see him. Oh, yeah.
That's probably your play right there.
Yeah, Wheaton's probably the play. Where can you see the projections?
7.9.
Oh, there it is.
You got projected the most.
So it might be Wheaton time, and that would be a very intriguing matchup. Bryant versus
Wheaton.
But as it stands right now, with a little bit of confusion, I'm going to go ahead and side with Martavis Bryant as getting the slight edge.
Just because Wheaton has been scoring touchdowns.
Yeah. I mean, at some point they change it up, and the switch flips a little bit here. So, but a tight matchup there, and you really don't know how that's going to pan out, depending if Jeffrey goes or if Wheaton starts. So we'll see there. Jumping down to the second wide receiver, and we have a couple of Jacksonville wide receivers here.
Oh, we do.
And a couple of nice performers this year if you've had them. Allen Hurns versus Allen Robinson, 4-130 against the spread. It's Allen Hurns getting the nod.
Look at his touchdown production. Like, I traded Charkandrick West for him. At the time, I had no wide receiver, and I wasn't quite sure how West was going to be. I just picked him up. And
Johnny Zaleski's been on the record saying that when you traded Kurt Ott West, and I honestly, I don't know how this is going. This is just a statement. Johnny said Kurt is going to win the championship with that move.
Mm-hmm. At the time,
Has he been good?
Yeah. At the time, I needed that. I needed a wide receiver very bad.
Yeah. John was on the record that day, and he continues to bring it up, that Kurt Ott won the championship with that move. So it'll be interesting.
It's funny. I was talking to Kurt. I think we were texting or something, and we were just talking about our matchup here, and he was saying, he's like, I can't believe I started. I forget what player he started. He was mad about. I was like, yeah, and then I said to myself, yeah, I can't believe I traded you West either.
Oh.
So yeah, it's a tough pill to swallow.
Yeah, so I guess we'll be getting a good look at him in the next matchup. I will be curious to see just how good he has been. But we have Allen Hurns against Allen Robinson here, and
I might have to get a chunk of that pay if Kurt ends up winning the league.
You might have to
I got the assist there, man.
But what can you say about Allen Robinson? He is the fifth position.
This is what makes me nervous with him, because I have him in my other league too, and I was looking at his stats here. And, I mean, he keeps scoring. He's due for one bad week.
Well, listen. So he is currently tied with two other players for the league lead in touchdowns with 13. And that's Odell Beckham Jr. We'll get into him later.
Cool.
And Douglas Baldwin. We will also get into him later as well. 13 touchdowns on the year, though. He just keeps on rolling. You mentioned with this current touchdown streak of 4 games, he's had 6 touchdowns in the last 4 games. Is he due for a game to fall off? Perhaps. But that matchup at New Orleans for both of these wide receivers bodes very well. I'm sure we will see some heavy points there coming out of the Jacksonville lineup. And a nice little stack there, I shall mention, for Rod of Bortles and Robinson. So we'll jump down to the tight ends now between the two teams. And your tight end has already played Antonio Gates, and not a very strong outing.
He did nothing.
By Mr. Gates, 1.1 fantasy points. Not what you had hoped out of the tight end position. And you wonder if this comes back a little bit. Because you had Gronk. Mm-hmm. You do mention the other guys have gotten you here, but 2 receptions for 11 yards out of Antonio Gates.
It was rough, but at the same time, like you said, these guys got me here.
Right.
I would not be in this position to get my money back, so I can't think the what-if game, because I wouldn't even be playing the what-if game.
Absolutely. And then on the flip side, we have Jordan Reed, who's been an absolute monster for Rod these past couple of weeks. He's coming off of an 18-point fantasy.
He got the Eagles this week,
along with a 20.4 fantasy point effort, and he's got the Philadelphia Eagles tonight, actually, in the Saturday night game. But this guy has been good. Position rank is 6th, and you have to obviously give the edge here to Rod, given that Gates has already done his game, only 1.1. This may be an opportunity for Rod to really separate. Looking at, from a position standpoint, this is maybe where he can pick up some serious points, especially with the way Reed's been playing over the past couple of weeks. You have something to add to that?
No, I agree with that. Jordan Reed's been great.
Jumping down to the flex, and here we go, Douglas Baldwin. He has been setting the world on fire as of late. But
where the hell he is due, though, to just
this is an unbelievable run by Doug Baldwin, ladies and gentlemen. In Week 12 against Pittsburgh, 145 for 3. Week 13 at Minnesota.
I thought that was the fluke week right there. He's not going to do anything after that.
Yeah. Week 13 at Minnesota, 94 for 2. Week 14 at Baltimore, 82 for 3. And in Week 15 this past week against Cleveland, 45 for 2. That's absolutely incredible. That is 10 touchdowns in the last 4 weeks. We mentioned he's tied for the league lead. He's been turning it on. Interesting thing about him. So in my big league, you get paid out for each position, the touchdown leader at each position. My dad and I have Doug Baldwin. So we mentioned that's how I knew that he was tied with Robinson and Odell Beckham. We will get into Odell Beckham, but he is suspended this week. So for me and my dad, we've kind of had a lost year, but we get to watch Baldwin versus Robinson this week. And we'll see who comes out on top. We're pulling for touchdowns.
I don't know who I like there.
I'll be pulling for you here, not Rod, obviously.
Yes.
You got Baldwin.
Turnover on downs.
So you got Doug Baldwin going in your flex. He is questionable, though. This is not good.
I'm sure he'll play.
Hamstring. Another hamstring injury. So he might not go.
He might not be his 100%. But
which is not good news
that's
for either of us.
What Rod's doing here is something you don't see too often, is a tight end your flex.
Yeah, he's going double tight end. He was telling me about this a little bit, and how can you not? With Gary
Barnes has been great.
The Barnyard Dog. This guy's been an absolute monster. Position rank 2 at the tight end position. So he goes Jordan Reed and Gary Barnage, both in the lineup, 2 tight ends. And with the red Q next to Doug Baldwin, you have to give Barnage here a little bit of an edge But if Baldwin goes and is healthy, hard to argue against him with how hot he has been in the last 4 games. Dropping down now to the defenses, kind of hard to
This is tough
to break down.
I mean, you look who Rod's going. You got Seattle.
Yeah, so you have the Giants D going up against Minnesota. Rod has the Rams D going up against Seattle.
I could change that if I really wanted to.
And you have a couple options.
I could put the Titans D in there.
Yeah, so Robbie, you have the Titans D versus Houston and the Eagles D versus Washington. Yeah, the Titans D versus Houston's an intriguing matchup.
Right.
But with those
Same
teams,
time,
with both those teams,
Minnesota
you don't know
is
what you're
off a
getting.
nice win last week. That may seem like the Giants a little more. Aren't the Giants fresh off a win, if I'm not mistaken?
They're fresh off a nice
No.
backdoor cover.
That's
against
right.
Kansas.
That is right. That was a great backdoor cover.
It was fine. It was fine.
Forgot all about that.
So, I mean, from the standpoint of trying to break down these two defenses, it's tough. Again, Giants versus Rams. If you're the
flip.
Rams, I kind of like their D, but the way Seattle's been playing,
I'd give it to myself.
in games at Seattle, that's tough. So I'll give it slightly to the Giants. Are the Giants still playing for anything now? Or are they out after that
They're
loss?
still
last week?
in. Because, I mean, I don't...
That division's not good.
It's a joke. I mean,
Yeah.
the Eagles are still... I think everyone but the Cowboys is still in.
Yeah.
So they're playing for
that,
something.
Yeah, that could very well be the case.
Mhm.
So as long as they're playing for something, I kind of lean towards
This will be a good
the
game
Giants
tonight.
there.
Maybe it's just the Philly side of me coming out. I'm out here, but I've been following the Eagles a little bit just because you get a free coffee when the Eagles win from Dunkin' Donuts.
And you appreciate that.
Yeah, you cheer for the Eagles because of that. I mean, they're not a threat to me. They're not in our conference, so I can care less about the Eagles.
Jumping down to the kickers here, wouldn't this be something if this was the point of separation for you? Steven Gostowski versus Carlos Santos, the Kansas City kicker versus the New England kicker. And what can you say? I mean, Gostowski, this guy's Mr. Automatic. As a matter of fact, I may draft him next year in like the 6th round.
I would do it again in a heartbeat.
Position rank, number 1. This is why you draft him as early as you did. To confirm, you drafted him in the 8th round, 87th overall.
I knew I was going to get... I got shit for it. And
He's an absolute monster. Has this guy missed this year? Has he missed?
Yeah, I saw him miss, I think, one last week, actually.
Oh, did he?
Yeah.
Yeah, he missed one last week. Let's see if he's missed any other one.
That's a hold.
He has not missed another field goal this week. He does have an extra point record going.
Really?
And they were talking about the other day. He just said it. I forget, it's something ridiculous. It's over 100. And they said it's never going to be beat now that it's moved back.
Yeah. That's
so
true.
he's like that. They're like, that's a record. When he hit it, they're like, that's a record that's going to be in the books for the rest of NFL history. Nobody will ever beat that.
Dumbass.
So he's automatic.
They just Miami just ran the ball like 60 yards and someone took a personal foul penalty on the run.
He's not happy about it.
No, he's not happy.
But I give the edge to Steven Gostowski there, Robbie's kicker. So
if he's there in the
ultimately,
8th round again, I'm going to take him.
so looking at the projected totals, this couldn't be closer. And these are updated after Robbie's had 2 guys play.
Rod's gonna take the edge if he remembers to take out Alshon Jeffrey.
That's true.
Yeah.
So you are projected 93.3. Rod's projected 93.8. So he's projected to win by a half a point. If he makes that little adjustment there, again, I don't know how much Baldwin or Jeffrey are being projected here, but I'll
take Eric Top or Vito Bottom covering the spread.
Yeah, we'll give him a slight edge here. Ultimately, when you have guys like Adrian Peterson and even an Allen Robinson who's been tearing it up. Again, this matchup's a little dependent on the injury situations for the wide receivers for each respective team.
I mean, it's going to come down to Sunday night.
It is, and that's going to be a fun one to watch. Again, the winner of this will take home a grand prize of 100 U.S. American dollars.
Is Rod down to you at all?
No, he is not. I don't even know what you're talking about. So, so jumping in now to the championship matchup, and here we go. Here it is, ladies and gentlemen.
Hopefully, you all fast forwarded like the 3rd place matchup to this one. This is the one that.
This is the big one,
and I'm in the 3rd place game.
Yes.
I'm not even really paying that much attention to it.
This is the big one. Both teams in the playoffs had a first round bye. They finished 1-2 respectively in the standings.
Best 2 teams are there.
The number 2 team, the Steel Curtain, Kurt Ott, going up against the number 1 team, Aces Deuces Lounge, Chad Zaleski, the reigning champion, the people's champion. And and an interesting start to this matchup already, which we're going to get into right now. The Steel Curtain finished his year 9-4, 11-2 for Aces Deuces Lounge. So he was the odds-on favorite coming into the playoffs. And it appears that the Steel Curtain has had nobody play yet, and Aces Deuces Lounge has had one person play.
This is when you know your team's good. It's just look at their benches.
Yeah. Both these teams have a lot of depth, and ultimately that's what it takes to win championships. You need guys to be able to step in with injuries and or even suspensions. And although, so to build upon the suspension discussion, I am now curious. I thought that Aces Deuces Lounge had Odell Beckham Jr. My guess is he had him, and once he heard about the suspension, he dropped him because there's no reason to keep him.
Absolutely.
Did he definitely have him?
Yeah, he had him.
Okay, that's what I thought.
That was his second pick. He went Brown and Beckham Jr.
That's right. That's absolutely right, yeah. That's what I thought, because I was with him on Christmas Eve, and I thought he had said that, and now I'm looking up and down his lineup here, and I'm not seeing the name.
Mm-hmm.
He clearly dropped him after the suspension was announced, so a very tough break out of the get-go to lose a world-class wide receiver in Odell Beckham Jr. And just to get sidetracked a little bit here, how about him last week? He went completely off the reservation.
That was fun to watch.
It was a blast to watch, but if you're the refs there, don't you take them both out of the game?
How did he not get kicked out at any point was beyond me.
I mean, that one drive in particular, I happened to be watching just that exclusive game. I was stuck at work, so that was like the only game on TV because they didn't have Red Zone on. And I'm watching this thinking, how are these two staying in the game? Every single play, whether the ball was even thrown their way or not, they were going back and forth.
It was ridiculous.
And did you see Norman before the game?
What was it, like threats or something? Or
he had a baseball bat out on the field. How is that guy not?
How do you even? First of all, how's that even like allowed?
How does the bat get onto the field?
I hate these thugs anymore.
I mean, he's standing there with a baseball bat just taunting Odell Beckham. So how is that not a suspension? I mean, how do you get onto the field with a baseball bat?
That's what I'm trying to figure out is how does a baseball bat get there?
Very interesting stuff. When all the dust settles, Aces Deuces Lounge is left without Odell Beckham. Really a crushing blow.
And you look, I mean, Amari Cooper, as we had to plug in, didn't pan out to help salvage any of that. So.
Yeah, so my guess is here it was that Amari Cooper was initially the flex. This guy was probably going to get the start regardless. I could stand corrected, but looking at his flex, he is Bilal Powell. I'm going to guess he jumped in the lineup with the news of the Odell Beckham suspension. So Chad did have Amari Cooper going on Thursday night. He's the only player between both teams that played in this championship matchup on Thursday. And Amari Cooper actually left the game early with an injury. Only had 2 receptions for 10 yards. I
actually did not know that.
And this is a guy that has been very consistent this year. He's had a fantastic rookie season. So Aces Deuces Lounge, who was really riding the strength of his wide receivers all season, sees them kind of fall apart a little bit here in the championship game. So he loses Odell Beckham and only 1 point out of Cooper, and that has to definitely put him behind the 8 ball a little bit. And it really opens the door for Kurt Ott here to maybe steal a championship.
I mean, just real quick, if I had to predict someone to win, I would say Kurt.
And we're going to go here player by player, but we did want to start off by kind of filling everybody in that was the case with Chad's wide receivers. And I had said it all along on paper, for my money, because the Steel Curtain at the beginning of the year was off and running.
Mm-hmm.
I said, for my money, Aces Deuces Lounge on paper, best team. It's his championship to lose. A couple of things haven't fallen his way to start this week, but we will see how it pans out. But what a game we're going to have here, and let's get right into it. So for the Steel Curtain, starting at quarterback, and this is hard to believe, and he did have a decision to make.
I know we started the year with Matt Ryan, and I know Tyrod, that's actually what me and Kurt were talking about. I was like, why did I start Tyrod Taylor? And he actually had a good second half last week.
He did. So he's actually got 3 quarterbacks rostered here. So he had a decision to make. He still may have a decision to make. But if his lineup, as is now, is any indication, the Steel Curtain has elected to go with Ryan Fitzpatrick, the New York Jets quarterback, going up against the New England Patriots. So an interesting call there. He opted to sit Phillip Rivers at Oakland, and a pretty good decision.
That's a good decision.
As it stands now, as Phillip Rivers only had 15 fantasy points. You also mentioned he has Tyrod Taylor as well.
Phillip Rivers, he's one of those players. So he starts out he gets really hot around week 3. And then he starts from week 3 to week 8, he's awesome every friggin' year, and he just fades.
Yeah, you're right. In that San Diego team, it's all kind of mind-boggling how bad they are.
Remember in Vegas when it was them versus the Packers?
Yeah, we went large on them, and they barely held on.
Barely held on,
They were getting like nearly 2 touchdowns. So let's click into Ryan Fitzpatrick real briefly here, because I'm just curious to see what his numbers are. So his position rank is 10, and he's had some very big weeks. In week 12, he had 29, week 13, 25, week 14, 24. He's coming off a 15-point week, which is a little low.
I actually liked him against New England this week.
I mean, this is going to be... and the Jets need to win to keep the playoff hopes alive.
I think the spread right now is like the Patriots -3, if I'm not mistaken.
Really?
Yeah. Let me double check that.
That is extremely low.
Extremely low, so...
Yeah, you have to like starting Ryan Fitzpatrick.
Absolutely. This can get a little interesting. What are we looking at here? -3 still.
Very interesting.
I love the Fitzpatrick play right now.
And you have to like him. And the intriguing thing about Fitzpatrick is, I mean, just how efficient he's been out. I mean, forget about fantasy, but he's really kind of kept this Jets team together. I know at the beginning of the year,
Geno Smith.
I stayed so far away from Brandon Marshall because I was so afraid of Geno Smith.
Right.
He ends up getting knocked out, which is maybe the best thing that's ever happened to this Jets franchise.
I love that $400 flight.
Yeah, exactly. And you look at Brandon Marshall now, and he is one of the most consistent wide receivers in football. And
he didn't do shit last year, but man, he came.
He's been a monster. Every time I watch him this year, he's getting in the end zone. Mm-hmm. So Ryan Fitzpatrick's been a big help for him. You see the name up there and you cringe a little bit, but ultimately, the more you look into it, you start feeling pretty good about Ryan Fitzpatrick this week. But what can you say? He's going up against the man, the myth, the legend, Cam Newton, and he is currently quarterbacking. I mean, the fact that the Carolina Panthers have a chance to go for a perfect season.
Remember that comeback in Seattle when they were down 10 with 2 minutes left?
Yeah.
And a deep ball into Greg Olsen. They're just so calm and collected, I swear, every single time.
And it's hard to put your finger on it. We were talking about this even earlier in the year on these podcasts. You look at the wide receiving core, nothing there. Greg Olsen's really the only one.
I don't say nothing's there. It's there. They're just not superstars. I mean, they get the job done.
They obviously get the job done. It's hard to argue that, but I mean, man, I don't think anybody could see this coming.
This might be a free play.
And Cam Newton just keeps on rolling. Let's see where he is from a position rank standpoint. He's number 1 overall. The interesting thing about him, and wow, he's coming off some monster weeks, 36, 23, 41 last week at New York. And this is a guy that was drafted in the 8th round by John Zaleski, dropped, then picked up by Aces Deuces Lounge. So you want to talk about how the waiver wire can impact the team.
Oh, yeah.
How about the number 1 overall quarterback being picked up off the waivers? And that could ultimately be the deciding factor in a championship game. So Cam Newton, I'm going to give him the edge this week at Atlanta, who's been god-awful.
You have to.
But an intriguing matchup there nonetheless. So
but it makes you think, though, Cam might... I mean, you keep thinking he's due to, have a bad week, and been saying this for a while now, so who knows?
Right. He just keeps on. I know. I feel like I've been waiting for this team to go down. Very intriguing game last week. We mentioned the backdoor cover by the Giants. But this team just keeps on winning. And really can't say,
can't say enough good things.
You really can't for Cam Newton and the Carolina Panthers. So jumping down now to the running backs. For the Steel Curtain, Matt Forte, and this was a guy drafted in the 1st round. A lot of people thought he was going to start falling off this year. He's been pretty consistent. It looks like he did miss a few weeks with injury.
Missed a few there.
But when he's been in the lineup, he's been solid. 18, 11, and 16 over his last 3 weeks. This week at Tampa Bay. So a nice little play here by Kurt Ott, Forte. But he's going up against another guy, all-world, and Todd Gurley.
Mr. Gurley, but look who he's playing.
Todd Gurley at Seattle. So he has a very tough matchup. But you can't say enough good things about Todd Gurley.
He hasn't played Seattle yet.
So let me say this. He misses his first 2 games coming back from the knee injury. They ease his way into the 3rd game. So basically the first 3 games he plays, the first 3 games of the year non-existent. They also had a bye week. So he misses 4 weeks. he's still the number 4 position rank at running back. That's how good this rookie is.
I think he's to be the number 1 draft pick next year in fantasy football.
I think so. It's hard to go.
It's hard to go against him
because Adrian Peterson next year is another year older. He'll still be a first-round pick, but I don't think you can justify that as number 1.
Mm-mm.
You have Le'Veon Bell, who's had all the injuries. He'll still be a first-round pick.
Keep in mind with Lev, I'm pretty sure his contract runs out the year after, so it's a contract year.
Yeah, so you can make a case for him, and he will, in all likelihood, be a top 5 pick, maybe even a top 3 pick.
Mm-hmm.
But you can make an easy case for Todd Gurley, and they're just feeding him.
It might be a little bit more wide receiver heavy next year.
He's been awesome this year. Despite the tough matchup this week, I will still take Todd Gurley at Seattle
Can you
over Matt
catch
Forte. Jumping down to the second running backs, now we have Lamar Miller for the Steel Curtain, the Miami running back, and let's take a look into his stats this year. He's been very good, but he is coming off a down week.
He's been fading a little bit.
Oh, yeah, he has been fading. This is correct. I always look at that position rank first.
Right.
I love mentioning that. Lamar Miller's 5th in the league, but you make a good point here. So in Week 11, the decline began. He had 5.5 fantasy points, 1.3, 9.8. We saw him bounce back huge with a 20-point week, but coming off this last week at San Diego, only 2.4 fantasy points, and now the Dolphins host Indianapolis.
I like him this week.
Yeah, Indy has not been good,
Mm-hmm.
so you have to kind of like the way things are setting up there for Lamar Miller. I suppose if you are an owner, I mean, let me ask you this, because you appear to be on one side of this. Do you like to see your players coming off a bad week or coming off a good week?
Love them coming off a bad week.
That's the impression I'm getting.
Absolutely.
The law of averages always seems to kind of balance out, but you can also make a case for a guy like a Doug Baldwin, where he's just been red hot.
I feel like he's due to have a bad one.
Right, but you've probably been saying that now.
I've been saying that. You're right.
So they get hot and they keep going.
Well, I mean, if I play percentages there, I mean, I would still say you've a better chance of a guy having a good week after a bad week.
Absolutely. So Lamar Miller, the second running back there for the Steel Curtain, and then we have James White, the New England running back for Aces Deuces
This
Lounge.
guy's been a stud.
You've been high on this guy.
Yes.
And he took over after the LeGarrette Blount.
They just keep throwing screen passes to him.
He just takes it and goes.
Look at his stats here. I mean, look at his rushing points.
Whoa. So last week he only had 1 rush for 6 yards, but he had 13.7 fantasy points. This guy's all receptions.
Brady's buddy right now.
For Chad, unfortunately, this isn't a PPR league because this would be a heck of a guy to have.
Absolutely.
So an intriguing matchup there against the Jets, whose D's pretty respectable, especially at home. And the way things are setting up. I'm going to go ahead and give the edge here to Lamar Miller.
I would do that too.
For the Steel Curtain. Jumping down now, wide receivers.
It's a fun matchup.
Woo! This is a hell of a matchup here. Julio Jones for the Steel Curtain versus Antonio Brown for Aces Deuces Lounge.
Look who Julio's going against.
And Julio up against Carolina, a tough draw for him. Position rank 3. He's been solid this year.
Mm-hmm.
Coming off a 17-point.
Julio, I feel like he might heat up though.
He's been that one bright spot there for Atlanta, who's had a miserable second
You look
half.
at his trend here. He had a good start, and then he started to fade. He's just been a roller coaster.
He has, and he's starting to heat up again, so look out. He is going up against Carolina, which is a tough draw, but Julio is Julio, and he'll find a way to get his. Antonio Brown.
Good night, Jim Kite.
What? Position rank 1. He's the man. This is a guy that PPR, non-PPR, is making a case to be a number 1 overall pick. PPR, I think it's a no-brainer at this point.
I agree.
I think it's a no-brainer. Non-PPR, there's a discussion to have there, but
you could make the argument that Ben is injury prone now. Every year he goes down a little bit.
Right, and Brown's clearly dependent on Ben. We saw when Ben was out of the lineup.
You look at AB's last 5 games, though. It's been a little bit of a roller coaster. I mean...
Yeah, he's been boom or bust.
He's there in the 20s.
He had 5, 29, 8, and 30. He's coming off a 16 reception week for 189 and 2. I'll take my chances with him against the Baltimore team that is just very injury. I mean, they have nobody in that lineup right now. Nobody.
Right.
He could easily have another 30-point fantasy point game. I'm going to give him the edge here. I'm not taking anybody against Antonio Brown. But Julio Jones, not a bad guy to match up with him. But we will give the edge here to Aces Deuces Lounge at that top wide receiver position. Next up, we have Eric Decker, the wide receiver for the Jets, going for the Steel Curtain. So he has the Fitzpatrick Decker stack.
A little side note here. He had Eric Decker on the bench last week.
Interesting. And it looks like he had 11.5 fantasy points, 6 for 55 and a touchdown. Here's a guy that's been getting in the end zone this year.
Yes, he has.
So it looks like he has what? How many touchdowns on the year? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. He's got a 10 touchdown year. Like I said, Fitzpatrick's been keeping Marshall and Decker very active for fantasy purposes, and it's a nice little start for wide receiver 2. We've already touched on the second wide receiver for Aces Deuces Lounge, Cooper, with only 1 point, a disappointing outing for Chad. So we're going to go ahead and obviously give the edge here to Eric Decker at the wide receiver 2 position. Jumping down now to the tight end position for the Steel Curtain, Travis Kelce out of Kansas City.
He's been a little quiet.
He has been a little quiet. Has only had 1 touchdown in the last 6 games. By your theory, he's due.
He's due.
And it appears he is going up against Cleveland. So this would be a nice team, a nice little matchup here for Kelce.
You look at Kurt. I mean, he has so many guys going off at 1 o'clock here. I mean, this is going to be decided by 8 o'clock Sunday.
That's a very good point.
That's kind of nice for it's not really much suspense there. I mean, Chad's going to be hoping that Hauschka just gets no field goals.
You make a very good point there. So for Kurt, he has everybody but his kicker going. His kicker is going at 4:25 that day, and that's it for Kurt. And for Chad, he has a couple guys, 2 guys, Gurley and Watson going at 4. And then this matchup is over. That's it. So we won't even have any implications on Sunday night, Monday night. None of that. This game will be decided after the 4 o'clock games tomorrow. So we'll have a champion. I actually might be with Chad tomorrow.
Nice.
I might be watching a few games.
So let's go for that repeat.
That will be interesting. And all right, so Travis Kelce, there's a guy that a lot of people were projecting high at the beginning of the year. He's been good, not great. But he's going up against Ben Watson.
It's good to put it.
For Aces Deuces Lounge, who's been pretty solid this year.
He's been all right.
You can't complain. He's been a nice little play. He's coming off a 6-reception, 49-yard, 1 touchdown week.
He has Tyler Eifert, who is out from, unfortunately.
A very good point there. So, he is missing Tyler Eifert, who was a monster earlier in the year. So, another injury / suspension.
They're not going for this, are they?
For Aces Deuces Lounge. And
they're probably trying to draw him off sides.
A 4th and 2 from their own.
They gotta be
25. There's no chance they go for this timeout there.
Look at the snow.
Snow is coming down here in Miami, Washington State.
Sorry.
So the edge there, Travis Kelce.
Yes,
I would agree. So Kurt getting another check mark there at the tight end position. Would be a different story if Eifert was in the lineup. But another tough break there for Chad. So now you see a down week for Cooper, who gets injured mid-game, a suspension for Odell Beckham, and an injury to Tyler Eifert. Sure, you could point up and down every lineup, but for Chad, that is a substantial amount of talent being left out of that lineup.
Absolutely.
But we'll jump down here, and there he is. How do you even say his name?
Charkandrick West.
Charkandrick West. The one that got away, Mr. Wright. The one that got away. This is the flex position for the Steel Curtain, and he has been very good since the injury to Jamal Charles.
You know what, though? I mean, I know he had a few bad weeks.
It
helped justify it a little bit. But then
it looks like he's had 4 big weeks.
But he had a touchdown against me last week to really stick it to me. So,
yeah, to beat you. So he is coming off a good week, but he did, as you mentioned, he did have quite a few down weeks.
He had a stretch where he didn't do much.
He's, again, another Kansas City player, so he's going up against Cleveland, a nice matchup there. He's coming off a 14.5 fantasy point week for the Steel Curtain. A nice player to have down there in the flex. Somebody who...
look at it a little bit. If you look at it, though, look who we can put there. If he's filling...
Wow.
Emmanuel Sanders, Sammy Watkins... I don't know much about Christine Michael.
He did have Julian Edelman, who's also doubtful. So you mentioned
I sat in between at the draft. I sat in between Kurt and I sat in between Chad. And literally every single time Kurt made a pick, I was like, that was a really good pick.
And here he is. He's sitting with all kind of depth in the championship.
It's a lot of talent right there.
But the thing is, your blessing almost becomes your curse a little bit here because you have some tough decisions to make. To tell Emmanuel Sanders and Sammy Watkins,
And I remember saying to Kurt at the draft with Emmanuel Sanders where he drafted him as, or maybe it was like round or two before. Emmanuel Sanders strictly, he said, I don't know what the hell he said on. He's like, "Do not draft me in fantasy football this year. We have a different setup now where we're not gonna be as wide receiver heavy." So he made like a public announcement: "Do not take me early."
Interesting.
Yes, and Emmanuel Sanders was hanging on for a while, if you can recall.
Yeah,
No one was taking him.
I actually thought, and he's had a nice year.
He's had a great year, minus that.
Well, it looks like he was out for a couple of weeks, which has hurt him. But other than that, he's coming off a 10-reception, 181-yard touchdown game for 26.5 fantasy points.
He killed me.
So that's tough there. He's up against Cincinnati this week. Maybe a decision to make, but it looks like he's going to go with West in the flex. Taking a look at Aces Deuces Lounge's flex.
I was playing Emmanuel Sanders in my other league, and whenever he scored that touchdown, I slammed my brand new phone off the ground and just got a lecture from
almost like the old. And for those of you who were there, the Buffalo Wild Wings flashback,
just
where
lost it, just slacked out.
You snapped when Jimmy Graham dropped the pass, punched the ball, and screamed "fuck." I believe the waitress asked you to turn it down a little bit.
Yeah, that's rightfully so.
Go! It echoed. We're watching this up here. A big play for Miami, which is good for Robbie. But all right, so let's get back into it. Bilal Powell, the flex for Chad. He's been a beast these past 3 weeks. 16, 14, and 13 in the respective weeks. He's got New England this week. You mentioned Chris Ivory.
Yeah.
What happened to Ivory?
I have no idea what the hell happened to him. I really take a lot of pride in not following the New York Jets that much.
Good, yeah.
And but I mean, look at Brandon Marshall. You look at Sorry. You look at Fitzpatrick's been good. I mean, they've had a pretty solid fantasy year, which, I mean, you look at last year, Geno Smith leading the way. They were probably the worst offensive fantasy team.
Right. So that is a very comparable matchup there, West versus Powell. Man, the only reason I'm going to take West here is because of the matchup against Cleveland versus Powell's matchup against New England. But, man, Powell's been a little more consistent since he's taken over the starting role, it appears. It'll
be interesting here if Kurt decides to. I mean, there's an outside chance Kurt could still put in Emmanuel Sanders. This could still come down to Monday if he does insert him in the lineup here.
That would be an interesting move.
Mm-hmm.
If he put Sanders in, you're right. He's got the Monday night game.
I do like the Broncos this week.
Going up against Cincinnati.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to. I mean, they got A.J. McCarron.
And plus, I mean, they've had some losses where I feel like they're due to win one.
Yeah. I'm sure they're probably pretty big favorites in that game.
Yeah, I haven't even looked at it yet. But
with A.J. McCarron, a quarterback for the Bengals.
That's rough.
Yeah, it's a tough break for them. So we'll give a slight edge there to Kurt in the flex position. Now we'll jump down to the defenses. Kurt's got the Steelers at Baltimore. Chad's got the Panthers at Atlanta. How do you pick against the Carolina Panthers? You don't.
You can't.
And Atlanta's offense.
Sorry, Kurt.
Julio has been getting his points. Other than that, nothing.
Nothing. And it should be interesting to see Josh Norman. How he matches up with Julio here.
Yeah, that's right. We'll see if he's bringing out baseball bats in the preview.
That'll be fun here.
But the Steelers up against Baltimore, not a bad matchup either. Baltimore's offense is anemic.
Which, I mean, you could make the case that the Steelers' D might be the better play here.
You could. Just because the Baltimore offense is that
exactly
bad, and they're actually not capable of anything.
But it's
Matt Ryan can always return to his old form and have a nice week.
Yeah, but
not the case with Baltimore.
It's tough to argue though against Panthers D.
Yeah, I've picked against them enough.
Yeah,
and I'm not gonna stand in front of this and do it again. So I'll take the Panthers D there, and let's jump down to the final matchup between these two teams, the kickers, Stephen Hauschka versus St. Louis.
It's a coin flip for
Ram Gano versus Atlanta. Again, it's so hard.
You can't really predict
so hard.
Kickers that much.
So, yeah, we're not even going to pick there. That's a pretty even matchup.
Yeah.
But as a whole, Robbie, what are you thinking about this matchup here?
Me, predict one, I would say Kurt.
Wow.
It's tough to go against the defending champ.
It is very tough. And, again, all injuries aside here, I think it's Aces Deuces Lounge is a pretty substantial favorite. But it's not the case. He's had Cooper go, who's only had 1 point, and so he's basically down a man.
A lot of Kurt's guys have favorable matchups.
That is true. And that's actually a tactic some people use.
That's how I go.
early in the year,
Mm-hmm.
you're kind of looking at how things are going to stack up for you in the playoffs and ultimately in championship week. But, man, it's tough. I'm going to, just because we've agreed with everything on this podcast, I'm going to take the other side here. I'll take Aces Deuces Lounge. I think that between Cam Newton, Todd Gurley, and Antonio Brown, that they'll have enough points to offset that 1 point from Cooper.
That's why I went Kurt, because of the 1 point from Amari.
Right. So, yeah, again, he's basically playing with one less player.
Right.
As it stands. Now, there's a good chance somebody for the Steel Curtain does something similar. And it's tough. It's tough. But you ride with the Steel Curtain. I'll ride or die with the defending
I'll say I
champ.
lost to the champ 2 years in a row.
So, there you have it, folks. That's it. That's breaking it down. We will note, Aces Deuces Lounge is now on an 8-game winning streak after winning his most recent playoff game.
God.
So look out. And Kurt Ott lost a game there at the end of the year to you.
He did lose to me.
Which helped you get in. So very intriguing here. It'll be a fun one to follow. It always is. I'm actually going to pull this up as I'm watching the games tomorrow just to keep an eye on it. And again, so much action going on at 1 o'clock.
Absolutely. Now, if me predict my matchup, I would take Rod.
Oh yeah, we never officially predicted your matchup.
When you're predicting against yourself, it's fine.
Well, I mean, if you don't have any confidence in yourself,
I mean, just on paper, his team's better. And I mean, Rod's antics in the draft, I don't want to take Rod. But at the same time, his team's just better.
Well,
you got to face it.
Somebody's got to back you, so I'll do it. I'll disagree with you there. I'll take you in that matchup. So
that's ironic.
We'll take you, and I'll take Aces Deuces Lounge. You've got Rod and Kurt. Again, it'll be fun to watch. Let's pull up the video here and see how long we've been going for. 56 minutes.
Fuck.
So you see how this happens all the time because you're rarely on these podcasts.
Right.
You see how quickly it goes as you just keep talking.
Yeah.
We apologize for being away for so long. I know I did get quite a few texts saying, "What's up with the football podcast?" If it were up to me, I would have been doing them all along. But I have a hard time finding co-hosts when everybody's out of town. And Mr. Fawcett isn't the kind of the podcast type.
Nah, he's not the podcast
so I didn't want to throw him into it if it wasn't something he wanted to do.
See, I do this in my other league, so my podcasts are no more than 15 minutes. I do one interview.
You also do it by yourself, though.
I do it by myself.
Which has to help.
It does.
Because if I was sitting here talking by myself, I probably would have stopped a long time ago.
But I have fun with it, though. Like, I'll interview the top point getter.
Well, that's fine.
And I just make fun of people, and it's great.
I mean,
it's great.
It's great, and people seem to get a kick out of it, so you have to keep it going. So for anybody asking out there, my intentions are we will do this league again next year. The intention is always to continue the podcasts. And I'll ask you, because this has been something that's been brought up on the hockey podcasts, do you know of a way, or do you know even if there is a way, to kind of Skype people in and do like a podcast where I can be doing it with you, even though you're in Philadelphia and I'm sitting here at my place?
I do not. I know when I FaceTime people, I literally will. I go on my iPad and I FaceTime people. I look so freaking stupid because I literally just hold it up.
Oh,
we're here with so and so, and I don't know how to do it.
Oh, interesting. I see what you're saying.
But at the same time, I would still make it work and do that.
Yeah, because I mean, obviously, if Ravito continues to stay in Chicago,
right.
and I believe that is his intention, at least from what I have got from the very minimal speaking we've done since he's taken off. I don't have a lot of people around here anymore. I mean, everybody's moved, so I don't have a lot of options around here. So if we can pull it up, I'm sure Ravito would like to jump it back in on a few, and I'd like to be able to get more people in. We didn't do as many interviews this year as I would have liked. Not too many special guests on. Of course, we did miss.
It was a down year. It was a down year.
We'll chalk it up to a down year.
Yeah.
Sophomore slump.
I mean, you think about that. How many people even live in the area anymore?
I mean, John lives in the area. Chad lives in the area. So other than those two, let's see if there's anybody else. Even as I pull up the standings here, Fawcett lives in the area. Robbie Giacchino and Ben don't live here. Birdie lives kind of in the area, but not really close to me. The Lassans, but Matt doesn't live here. I don't think Matt lives here. Yeah, he's up at school. So Scotty's here. So it's tough.
Right.
The people that are in the area, it's hard,
Now let's ask this question: are we going to do a live draft next year?
We're going to do everything we can to get a live draft going because, in all honesty, for me, that's the most fun of the year.
It's so much fun. It's right.
It's like we call it Christmas morning. You can't beat a live draft.
It's fun.
And so I'll tell you right now. Here's the plan. I'm gonna invite as many people as I can over. Whoever can make it back, we'll be in communications. We'll try to set it up for a weekend where people can get back into Pittsburgh. And we'll plan it. We'll try to plan it a few months in advance so people have time to.
Well, I would, if possible, just because this is the Fawcett factor with how we lost Jordy Nelson in preseason for the year.
Do it as late as possible.
Do it as late as possible.
Yeah, and I agree with that. It's honestly hard to wait.
It's tough with schedules. I know. And I was the same way. You get a little anxious. You see other people doing their drafts, and they're talking, and then you're doing all these mock drafts. So yeah, it's fun.
Absolutely. So that will be the plan next year, though. We will definitely have a live draft. Whoever can make it, great. Whoever can't, I'll Skype in or I'll make it work. I'll be the guy that sits there and figures everything out. So the people that do attend can just sit back, enjoy. It may take a little bit longer, but honestly, it's the best day of the year. I'd sit there all day if I had to. So that's the plan. I did want to mention congratulations to Austin Revito. New team name, get him next year. Last place, a 2-11 record.
Is he buying the draft board?
He will be buying the draft board.
I forgot all about that.
He knew it. He had been saying it before he left that's where he was trending. I flirted with disaster there, but I did end the year 4-9.
You look at his. This is how I look at it here. Determined. I didn't think. Look, you look at him. I guess he did. Never mind. I was looking at the wrong team. I was looking at your team. He did have a bad year.
Yeah, I was actually middle of the pack, points forward, but finished second to last. So
you look at this though. I mean, Lasson's were second.
Right. So they had a very strong year, but Kurt was 3, Chad was 1.
See, I like so the top 6 point getters got in. All right.
Good.
That's how it should be.
Yeah, exactly. So Revito will be buying the draft board. However, and this we will wrap it up here. I was talking with somebody that comes into St. Clair Country Club, and he had come in last place in not 1 but 2 leagues, and there was 2 punishments that he had, which made the idea of buying a draft board sound kind of boring. Whenever I told him this. So in 1 league, he has to dress up as a woman and go out on the south side for the entire night, not just 1 bar for like 15 minutes. You have to get fully dressed up, heels, makeup, dress, everything, and go out.
Oh, no.
The one thing about that, the one saving grace is you could be like, I lost my fantasy football league, and it's fine.
He probably gets laid after
I said, yeah. I said, you might be able to like parlay that into an interesting conversation.
Yeah, parlay that.
Yeah, who knows? The tough one, though, was he had to go do 10 minutes of stand-up comedy on a stage. And he couldn't mention that fantasy football had anything to do with him being up there. He had to act dead serious, and he was honestly, telling me it. You could see it in his eyes how nervous he was that he had to do this.
That's like Impractical Jokers right there.
It is, exactly. He's like, I'm honestly like losing sleep over this because I hate like public speaking. I don't like this at all. Now, and he's like, these are guys that'll have me on the hook. Like I have to do this.
Right.
There's no backing out of it. So next year, I'm thinking we come up with something, maybe not to that extent, but something that's a little more fun and humiliating.
You know what? Jake Boss has a good one in one of his leagues. I think you might have heard this, where
let's hear it.
His buddy, I guess the loser in one of his leagues, had to dress up in a Superman costume and take the ACTs.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah.
That is great.
That is a good one, too. So we will get the ball rolling on some ideas for next year.
I like that.
Because we could all chip in a couple bucks and buy the draft board. It would be more fun to have something a little more humiliating riding on that last place, because a lot of people, the draft board's like $40 if you get it, the one that we always get. So a lot of people are like $40.
Ooh,
like, what's that?
Yeah.
If you knew you had to, go up on stage for 10 minutes of comedy, you would be on the waiver wire.
The only thing that's a little tough, though, is just because we're all in different places now.
It is. Mm-hmm. It is. But we would we could think of something that would...
Maybe something like Thanksgiving time, Christmas time.
Yeah.
I guess Christmas time.
Or you could even come up with something that doesn't necessarily require it
Traveling.
being like an event and everybody having to be there, So I don't know. We'll get the ball rolling on some ideas there, but I thought that was funny. Some of the things that other leagues do. Do you have any things for your other league? What is last place?
We did not do a punishment. We did not come up with it.
That's surprising.
Which
you would have something.
Things we do a little different in our league is our buy-in is 128, which that number is because the top point getter wins $25 every week, and I won it 4 times, so I won $100 right there.
See, that's nice.
That's nice.
That's something I've thought about instituting in this league.
An extra $28.
What'd you say you're buying?
128.
128.
Yeah.
So
there's 12 teams.
So you did the math.
Yeah.
You brought all. So that's something that we can talk about next year as well. just to give a little motivation. I know that in our big league we did that, and my dad and I just hit the week high despite being totally out of it. So to win a little bit of money back,
It's fun.
it keeps you into it.
And I know one person won twice, didn't even make the playoffs.
Right, but he ends up getting some money.
He got a little
back,
bit of cash back. So it keeps you motivated.
Yeah, and it keeps you playing, and that's ultimately what the punishments try to do,
Right.
is to make sure teams don't pack it and stop looking, because that kills the league.
It kills the fun.
Yeah, especially whenever you got some teams jockeying for a playoff position. Somebody has that team.
That's why you got to do it,
so
you don't get anything like that.
Yeah, it keeps everything even, and so we will. We'll get the ball rolling on some ideas, but we're gonna wrap it up here. We're nearing an hour and 5 minutes. Again, my apologies for the way things have panned out this year. My intention all along was to continue to do these every week. We're going to actively pursue ways to continue to bring these to you. I'd love to do a championship one. If Chad wins, that'll be easy. I'm just going to bring Chad on, and me and him can just talk about what another great year it was.
You have an iPad?
I don't. My dad does. So
that's how I do the interviews.
So we could do that as well.
It's kind of
funny.
If
not, I'll just bring Kurt on via phone or FaceTime or
I'd
something.
use my phone sometimes too. We FaceTime.
So my goal, and I don't think we actually did a championship one last year after Chad won.
No, I know we did a preview.
We did a preview. I said we were going to do a championship one. We just never got around to it. So this year, especially since we've missed quite a few podcasts, I want to get that.
You owe it to the Warriors.
But best of luck to you and Rod in the third place matchup, and of course, best of luck to Kurt Ott, Chad Zaleski, the big matchup. And again, a lot of stuff decided at 1 o'clock on Sunday. I'll be tuned in.
I'll check that app a few times.
Yeah, I mean, and makes everything interesting. And
Absolutely.
ultimately, that's all we try to do. So, for the second to last time this year, we are signing off. Robbie Wright, hey buddy, thank you very much for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
I appreciate it. He was only in for the weekend, so he made good use of his time, came over here, dedicated a good hour and 7 minutes to some good fantasy football podcasts. We appreciate having you here.
And a couple sets of bench press. Just a few.
We did hit a few.
Didn't want to get a sweat, just a few high weight, low rep.
Yeah, it's never a lot of work
never,
to go together.
Never.
It turns into social hour. But thank you, everybody, for tuning in to the Championship Week podcast. We will be back with you, or at least I will be back with you, for the post-championship podcast with our league champion. So signing off once again, Robbie Wright, Eric Zaleski. We'll catch you next time here on the National Fixed League podcast.